My routine had become a comforting ritual over the years. I would wake up early, brew a fresh pot of coffee, and sit at the kitchen table to plan my day. The mornings were always quiet, offering a brief respite before the hustle and bustle of daily life took over. My wife, ever the night owl, would still be asleep, wrapped in the blankets, oblivious to the world outside. Our life together had settled into a predictable rhythm. We had met in college, quickly falling into an easy companionship that blossomed into love. Our relationship had its highs and lows, but we navigated them with what I believed was mutual understanding and respect. We got married, bought a house in the suburbs, and settled into what felt like a good life. But something changed over the past year. The subtle shift was almost imperceptible at first. She started coming home later from work, citing new projects and after-hours meetings. I didn't question it initially. We both had careers that demanded our attention, and I trusted her. One evening, as I was cleaning up after dinner, I noticed her phone buzzing on the counter. It wasn't unusual for her to receive messages, but the frequency had noticeably increased. Curious, I glanced at the screen. It was a message from a number I didn't recognize, but the content was innocuous enough. A simple, "Can't wait to see you again." I shrugged it off, telling myself it was probably just a friend or colleague. Weeks went by, and the messages continued. Each time I caught a glimpse, the language grew more intimate. My unease grew, but I was wary of jumping to conclusions. Confrontation had never been my strong suit, and I didn't want to come off as paranoid. I decided to let it slide, hoping it was all just a misunderstanding. One Saturday morning, I decided to surprise her with breakfast in bed. I quietly cooked her favorite omelet and brewed a fresh pot of coffee. Carrying the tray upstairs, I nudged the bedroom door open with my foot. She was in bed, her back turned to the door, talking softly on the phone. I paused, not wanting to intrude, but her words stopped me cold. "I miss you too," she whispered, her voice tinged with a tenderness that I hadn't heard directed at me in months. "I can't wait until we can be together again." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. The tray wobbled in my hands, and I had to steady myself against the doorframe. She turned, her eyes widening in surprise and guilt when she saw me standing there. "I was just talking to a friend," she stammered, her face flushing. "You know, from work." I nodded, unable to find my voice. The seed of doubt that had been planted weeks ago now took root, and I could feel it growing. I set the tray down on the nightstand and left the room without a word. My mind was racing, trying to piece together the fragments of evidence I had accumulated over the past few months. The days that followed were a blur. I threw myself into work, trying to distract myself from the gnawing suspicion that had taken hold of me. But the signs were impossible to ignore. She was increasingly distant, her laughter forced, her touch perfunctory. One evening, after another late night at the office for her, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know the truth. I waited until she fell asleep, then carefully took her phone from the nightstand. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through her messages. "Dear viewers, more than 90% watch my content without subscribing. If you still have not subscribed, then I ask you to do so. For me, this is the best motivation to continue." What I found confirmed my worst fears. There were dozens of messages from the same number, filled with declarations of love and plans for the future. My heart sank as I read through them, each word a dagger to my already wounded heart. It was clear that this wasn't just a fling. It was a full-blown affair. They had been seeing each other for months, meeting in secret, sharing moments that should have been ours. I put the phone back and lay down next to her, my mind racing. How had we come to this? What had I missed? I felt a wave of anger and betrayal wash over me, but I also felt a deep sadness. I had loved her with everything I had, and now it felt like all of that had been for nothing. The next morning I confronted her. I told her what I had found, how I had known for weeks, but had been too afraid to face the truth. She didn't deny it. Instead, she looked at me with a mixture of guilt and relief, as if a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. "I never meant to hurt you," she said, tears streaming down her face. "But I can't keep living a lie. I love him." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stood there stunned, trying to process what she had just said. All the years we had spent together, the life we had built, it all seemed to crumble in an instant. We spent hours talking, Or rather, she talked while I listened in numb silence. She explained how it had started, how she had felt neglected and unappreciated, how he had made her feel alive again. I listened, trying to understand, but it all felt like a bad dream. In the weeks that followed, we tried to pick up the pieces. We saw a therapist, hoping to salvage what was left of our marriage, but it soon became clear that too much damage had been done. The trust was gone, replaced by a chasm of hurt and betrayal that neither of us could bridge. Eventually, we decided to separate. The decision was mutual, but it didn't make it any easier. We divided our belongings, sold the house, and went our separate ways. The divorce was finalized quietly, without drama or fanfare. Just two people who had once loved each other now going their own ways. In the aftermath, I spent a lot of time reflecting on what had happened. I realized that I had been so caught up in my own world that I had failed to see the signs. I had taken our relationship for granted, assuming that our love was enough to weather any storm. But love, I learned, is not enough on its own. It needs to be nurtured, tended to like a garden, or it withers and dies. I don't know where she is now, or if she's happy. I hope she is. As for me, I've slowly started to rebuild my life. It's been a long, painful process, but I've come to accept what happened and to learn from it. I still believe in love, but I've learned that it requires more than just good intentions. It requires effort, understanding, and above all, honesty. Months passed since the divorce, and I found myself navigating a new life, one marked by solitude and introspection. I moved into a small apartment downtown, a stark contrast to the suburban house we once shared. The change of scenery was a welcome distraction, a chance to start anew. Work became my sanctuary. I threw myself into projects, taking on more responsibilities, working late into the night. My colleagues noticed the change in me, but were polite enough not to pry. I appreciated their discretion, finding solace in the routine and structure that work provided. In the evenings, I would often walk through the city. Dear viewers, I ask you to subscribe to the channel under this video. I will be very grateful to you, losing myself in the noise and movement. It was during these walks that I began to reconnect with myself, rediscovering passions and interests that had been buried under the weight of a failing marriage. I started reading again, picking up novels and non-fiction books that had long gathered dust on my shelves. I joined a local gym, finding that physical exertion helped clear my mind and lift my spirits. Despite the progress I was making, there were still moments when the past would creep up on me. I would find myself reaching for the phone to call her, only to remember that she was no longer a part of my life. Memories would flood back unbidden, triggered by a song on the radio or a familiar scent. It was in these moments that the pain felt fresh, as if no time had passed at all. One night, as I was returning from one of my walks, I received a call from an old friend. We hadn't spoken in years, our lives having taken different paths, but he had heard about the divorce and wanted to check in. We met for coffee the next day, and it was like no time had passed. We talked for hours, catching up on lost time, sharing stories and laughter. It was a reminder that life goes on, and that new connections can be forged even in the midst of loss. As the months turned into a year, I slowly began to rebuild my social life. I joined a book club, where I met people who shared my love of literature. I started volunteering at a local shelter, finding purpose in helping others. These activities filled the void that had been left by the end of my marriage, giving me a sense of community and belonging. One evening at a book club meeting, I met someone who would become an important part of my life. She was intelligent, kind, and had a warmth that drew people to her. We bonded over our shared love of books and quickly became friends. There was no rush, no pressure, just a natural connection that felt right. As our friendship grew, so did my feelings for her. It was a slow, gradual process, but one that felt genuine and real. I was hesitant at first, afraid of repeating past mistakes, but she was patient and understanding. We talked openly about our pasts, our fears, and our hopes for the future. It was through these conversations that I realized how much I had grown, how much I had learned from my previous relationship. Eventually, we took the leap and started dating. It was a new beginning, one marked by mutual respect and understanding. I was determined not to repeat the mistakes of the past, to be more present and attentive. We spent our days exploring the city, trying new restaurants, attending concerts and exhibitions. Life felt vibrant and full of possibilities once again. In time, I introduced her to my family and friends. They were happy to see me moving on, to see me happy again. It wasn't always easy. There were still moments of doubt and insecurity, but we faced them together, with honesty and communication. Looking back, I realized that the experience of betrayal and loss had fundamentally changed me. It had been a painful lesson, but one that had ultimately made me stronger and more resilient. I had learned the importance of communication, of not taking love for granted, and of always striving to be the best partner I could be. Now, as I stand on the threshold of a new chapter in my life, I feel a sense of hope and optimism. The past is behind me, and while it has shaped who I am, it does not define me. I am ready to embrace the future, to build a life filled with love, laughter, and endless possibilities. One autumn afternoon, as I sat on the porch of our new home, I found myself reflecting on the intricate web of life's experiences that had brought me to this moment. The leaves were turning brilliant shades of red and gold, a reminder of the beauty that can emerge from change. It struck me how, despite the pain of the past, I had come to a place of profound contentment. It was during one of these reflective moments that an unexpected opportunity arose. My partner and I had been discussing ways to give back to the community, inspired by our own journey of growth and healing. We decided to start a support group for individuals who had experienced infidelity and relationship trauma. Our goal was to create a safe space where people could share their stories, find solace in shared experiences, and learn strategies for moving forward. The group quickly gained traction. We rented a small community center room and began holding weekly meetings. Each session started with a brief introduction, followed by an open floor where participants could speak freely. The stories shared were varied and poignant, ranging from fresh wounds to long-healed scars. It was a humbling experience, witnessing the raw vulnerability and resilience of the human spirit. One evening, a man about my age stood up to share his story. His wife had left him for another man, a betrayal that had shattered his world. As he spoke, I saw in him a reflection of my former self, the confusion, the hurt, the desperate search for answers. After the meeting, I approached him, offering a listening ear and a cup of coffee. We sat for hours, exchanging experiences and insights. It was a reminder of how far I had come and how much I still had to offer. As the support group grew, so did my sense of purpose. Helping others navigate their pain was healing for me as well. It reinforced the idea that we are all connected, that our experiences, no matter how painful, can serve a greater good. My partner was instrumental in this endeavor, bringing her own perspective and empathy to the table. Together, we formed a strong team, each of us contributing in our own unique way. In addition to the support group, I found myself drawn to writing. I started a blog, chronicling my journey from betrayal to healing. The act of putting my thoughts into words was therapeutic, allowing me to process my emotions and share my insights with a wider audience. To my surprise, the blog gained a following, resonating with people from all walks of life. Readers reached out to share their own stories, to seek advice, or simply to express their gratitude. It was a reminder of the power of connection and the importance of sharing our truths. One day, I received an email from a publisher who had stumbled upon my blog. They were interested in turning my story into a book, believing it could provide comfort and guidance to others going through similar experiences. I was both thrilled and apprehensive. Writing a book was a daunting task, but the opportunity to reach more people and make a difference was too significant to pass up. With my partner's encouragement, I agreed to the project. Writing the book was a journey in itself. It required me to revisit painful memories, to delve deep into my emotions, and to articulate lessons learned. There were days when the process felt overwhelming, but my partner was a constant source of support. She reminded me of the importance of my story, of the impact it could have on others. Slowly but surely, the manuscript took shape. The book, titled From Shadows to Light, was published a year later. It was a deeply personal account of my journey, interwoven with insights from the support group and contributions from my partner. The response was overwhelming. Readers from around the world reached out to share how the book had helped them, how it had given them hope and strength. It was a humbling and gratifying experience, knowing that my story had made a difference. As my professional and personal life flourished, I continued to grow and evolve. I took up new hobbies, exploring interests that had been dormant for years. Photography became a passion, a way to capture the beauty and complexity of the world around me. My partner and I traveled whenever we could, immersing ourselves in different cultures and experiences. Each trip was an adventure, a chance to create new memories and deepen our bond. One particularly memorable trip was to a remote village in the mountains. We stayed in a small, family-run guest house, spending our days hiking through breathtaking landscapes and our evenings by the fire, sharing stories with fellow travelers. It was during one of these evenings that I had a profound realization. Life, with all its ups and downs, is a journey of discovery. Each experience, no matter how painful or joyous, shapes us and leads us to new horizons. Back home, our lives settled into a comfortable routine. The support group continued to thrive, and I found myself taking on a mentorship role for newer members. It was rewarding to see them progress, to witness their growth and healing. The group had become a second family, a community bound by shared experiences and mutual support. Professionally, I continued to excel. The promotion had opened doors to new opportunities, and I embraced them with enthusiasm. My work was fulfilling, challenging me in ways that kept me engaged and motivated. I found a balance between my career and personal life, ensuring that I made time for the people and activities that mattered most to me. As I reflect on my journey, I am filled with a sense of gratitude. The path has not been easy, but it has led me to a place of peace and fulfillment. I have learned to embrace life's uncertainties, to find strength in vulnerability, and to cherish the connections that enrich my life. The scars of the past remain, but they are a testament to my resilience and growth. They remind me of the lessons learned, of the importance of love, honesty, and self-care. They are a part of who I am, but they do not define me. Instead, they serve as a reminder of the journey I have taken and the possibilities that lie ahead. Life is a continuous journey, one that is ever-changing and unpredictable. I have learned to embrace it with open arms, to welcome each new chapter with hope and optimism. I am surrounded by love, supported by a strong partner, and fortified by the lessons of my past. The future is bright, and I am ready to embrace it with open arms. Years have passed since the day I discovered my wife's infidelity. Time, as they say, heals all wounds, though some scars remain. I've learned to live with those scars, to see them not as marks of pain, but as symbols of growth and resilience. The woman I met at the book club is now my partner, and together we have created a life filled with joy and mutual respect. We bought a house in a quiet neighborhood, a place where we could build new memories and create a home that reflected our shared values and dreams. Our relationship is different from my first marriage in many ways. We are both committed to open and honest communication. We make it a point to check in with each other regularly, to talk about our feelings and address any issues before they can fester. This level of transparency has created a strong foundation of trust and understanding. We've also made it a priority to keep our relationship dynamic and exciting. We plan regular date nights, take spontaneous trips, and always make time for each other despite our busy schedules. It's not always easy, but the effort we put in is worth it. We've found that these small acts of love and consideration help keep our bond strong. Reflecting on my journey, I realize how much I have changed. I am no longer the person who once took love for granted. I've learned to appreciate the small moments, the quiet acts of kindness that form the bedrock of a strong relationship. I've also learned the importance of self-care and personal growth. I continue to pursue my hobbies and interests, ensuring that I remain fulfilled and happy as an individual. I've reconnected with old friends and built new relationships. My social circle has expanded, and I've surrounded myself with people who uplift and support me. These connections have been invaluable, providing me with a sense of community and belonging. Professionally, I've reached new heights. My dedication to work paid off, and I received a promotion that came with increased responsibilities and challenges. I've embraced these opportunities, using them as a platform to grow and excel. My career has become a source of pride and fulfillment, complementing the happiness I've found in my personal life. Occasionally, thoughts of my ex-wife cross my mind. I wonder how she is doing, if she found the happiness she was searching for. Despite the pain she caused, I bear her no ill will. Our time together taught me valuable lessons, and for that, I am grateful. I hope she too has learned and grown from our shared experiences. Life, I've come to understand, is a series of chapters. Some are filled with joy and others with sorrow, but each one contributes to the story of who we are. My journey through betrayal and heartbreak has ultimately led me to a place of peace and contentment. It has shaped me into a more empathetic, understanding, and resilient person. As I look to the future, I do so with hope and excitement. I know there will be challenges ahead, but I am confident in my ability to face them. I am surrounded by love, supported by a strong partner, and fortified by the lessons of my past. This chapter of my life is still being written, and I am eager to see where it leads. With each day, I strive to be the best version of myself, to love deeply and live fully. The past is a part of me, but it does not define me. The future is bright, and I am ready to embrace it with open arms. I met her in college. Back then, she was the girl everyone noticed when she walked into a room. Her beauty was undeniable, and it was matched by her sharp mind and captivating smile. I was just an ordinary guy, studying hard to make a future for myself. When she agreed to go out with me, I felt like the luckiest man alive. We quickly fell in love, and everything seemed perfect. Life with her was a dream. She cooked like a professional chef, turning even the simplest meals into culinary masterpieces. Our sex life was passionate and frequent, adding a layer of intimacy that made our connection feel unbreakable. We supported each other through the early stages of our careers, always celebrating each other's successes. It felt like nothing could come between us. Our wedding was a grand affair attended by friends and family who were genuinely happy for us. We exchanged vows with promises of eternal love and fidelity, believing every word we said. The honeymoon was just as magical, filled with laughter, adventure, and the unshakable belief that we were meant to be together forever. For the first few years, everything was great. We bought a house in a nice neighborhood, decorated it together, and settled into our new life as a married couple. We both worked hard, but we always made time for each other. Weekend getaways, date nights, and spontaneous surprises kept the spark alive. Our friends often commented on how perfect we were for each other, and I believed it too. But then, things started to change. It was subtle at first, almost imperceptible. She began coming home late, often with vague excuses about work or meeting friends. Her phone became a constant presence, buzzing with messages she would quickly hide from me. The warmth that once defined our relationship began to fade, replaced by a growing sense of distance. I tried to ignore the gnawing suspicion that something was wrong. I told myself that she was just busy or stressed, that it was all in my head. But the signs were hard to ignore. She was more secretive, more detached. Our conversations became shorter, filled with awkward silences where there used to be laughter and shared dreams. One night, after she came home later than usual, I decided to confront her. I asked her point blank if there was someone else. Her reaction was defensive, almost angry, but she denied it. She accused me of being paranoid, of not trusting her. The conversation ended in a bitter argument, leaving me more confused and hurt than before. The days that followed were filled with tension. We barely spoke, and when we did, it was strained and uncomfortable. I started paying more attention to her behavior, looking for any clues that might confirm my suspicions. I noticed how she would smile at her phone, how she seemed to care more about her appearance, how she would avoid intimacy with me. It was like living with a stranger. My work began to suffer as well. I couldn't focus, constantly distracted by thoughts of what might be happening behind my back. Colleagues noticed my distraction, offering unsolicited advice that only made me feel worse. I didn't know who to trust or where to turn for help. One evening, I confided in a close friend. He listened patiently, offering a sympathetic ear. He suggested that I hire a private investigator, someone who could find out the truth without her knowing. At first, I was hesitant. It felt like a betrayal, like I was admitting defeat. But the doubt was eating me alive, and I needed answers. The investigator was discreet and professional. Within a week, he had gathered enough evidence to confirm my worst fears. She was having an affair with a coworker, a man I had never met but whose name was now etched in my mind as the person who had destroyed my life. The photos and messages were undeniable proof of her betrayal. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and utterly devastated. The woman I had loved and trusted had shattered our life together. She showed little remorse, instead turning the blame on me. accusing me of not being attentive enough, of not making her feel special. It was like a knife twisting in my gut. We argued fiercely, saying things we could never take back. She accused me of being too focused on my career, of neglecting her needs. I retaliated by pointing out her hypocrisy, how she had always valued material possessions and status over the simple joys of our relationship. It was a bitter, venomous exchange that left us both emotionally drained. Dear viewers, more than 90% watch my content without subscribing. If you still have not subscribed, then I ask you to do so. For me, this is the best motivation to continue. The decision to divorce was inevitable. As we discussed the logistics, she revealed her true motives. She wanted the house, the car, and a significant portion of my savings. It became clear that she had planned this all along, positioning herself to gain as much as possible from our separation. The realization hurt more than the affair itself. After the divorce, I spiraled into a dark period. I turned to alcohol to numb the pain, spending nights drinking alone in my empty apartment. I lost touch with friends and family, isolating myself in a cocoon of self-pity and despair. The future seemed bleak, and I couldn't see a way out of the darkness. But slowly, I began to rebuild. With the help of a therapist, I started to confront my emotions and process the trauma. I realized that dwelling on the past would only keep me trapped in a cycle of bitterness and regret. I had to move forward, to find a way to reclaim my life. I reconnected with old friends, started new hobbies, and focused on my career with renewed vigor. The process was slow and painful, but gradually, I began to feel like myself again. I learned to let go of the anger and resentment, to accept that some things are beyond our control. Occasionally, I would hear about my ex-wife through mutual acquaintances. She remarried quickly, to a man with more money and status than I could ever offer. But the stories I heard suggested that she was not as happy as she pretended to be. There were whispers of discontent, of fights and regrets. It seemed that the life she had chosen was not the fairy tale she had envisioned. Reflecting on my experience, I realized the importance of choosing a life partner wisely. I had been blinded by her beauty and charm, overlooking the warning signs that were there from the beginning. I vowed never to make the same mistake again, to value substance over appearance, to seek a partner who would cherish the simple, honest moments of life. My journey to healing was long and arduous, but it taught me invaluable lessons about love, trust, and self-worth. I emerged stronger, more resilient, and more aware of what truly matters in a relationship. I knew that one day I would find someone who appreciated me for who I was, someone who would value the depth of our connection over material possessions. And so, I moved forward, with hope in my heart and a clear vision of the future. The scars of the past remained, but they no longer defined me. I was ready to embrace life again, to find joy in the present, and to look forward to a brighter tomorrow. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Slowly but surely, I built a new routine for myself. I started going to the gym regularly, taking care of my body in a way I hadn't done in years. Physical activity became a therapeutic outlet, helping me to channel my emotions into something positive. At work, I found renewed purpose. The distractions that had plagued me were gone, replaced by a fierce determination to succeed. I took on new projects, pushed myself harder than ever before, and began to see the fruits of my labor. Promotions and accolades followed, but this time, they brought a sense of personal satisfaction rather than a need to impress anyone else. Socially, I reconnected with old friends and made new ones. I joined a hiking club, rediscovering my love for the outdoors. The fresh air and camaraderie were invigorating, helping me to see the world from a new perspective. I also took up painting, an old hobby I had abandoned years ago. The creative process was soothing, providing a way to express emotions that words could not capture. One evening, while attending a friend's party, I met someone new. She was different from anyone I had ever been with, kind, genuine, and down to earth. We talked for hours that night, sharing stories and laughter. There was an immediate connection, but this time I was cautious. I had learned the hard way that initial chemistry could be misleading. We took things slowly, getting to know each other without rushing into anything. As the months passed, I realized that she was everything I had been looking for. She valued honesty and simplicity, cherishing the little moments that make life meaningful. Our relationship was built on mutual respect and trust, a stark contrast to what I had experienced before. One evening, As we sat together on my porch, watching the sunset, she turned to me and asked about my past. I hesitated at first, unsure of how much to reveal, but I decided to be honest, sharing my story with her. She listened without judgment, holding my hand as I recounted the pain and betrayal I had endured. When I finished, she looked at me with compassion in her eyes. "I'm so sorry you went through that," she said softly. "But I'm glad you told me. It helps me understand you better." Dear viewers, I ask you to subscribe to the channel under this video. I will be very grateful to you. Her words were a balm to my soul, reassuring me that I had finally found someone who could see me for who I truly was. We continued to build our relationship on a foundation of honesty and open communication, always making sure to prioritize each other's needs and feelings. As time went on, we began to discuss our future together. We talked about our dreams, our goals, and the kind of life we wanted to build. It was a stark contrast to the materialistic and superficial conversations I had once had with my ex-wife. This time, I felt a deep sense of alignment and shared purpose. We eventually moved in together, creating a home that was filled with love and laughter. The house was modest, but it was ours, and every corner of it reflected our shared tastes and values. We spent our weekends gardening, cooking together, and exploring the world around us. It was a simple, fulfilling life that brought me immense joy. One day, while sorting through some old boxes, I came across a photo album from my previous marriage. Flipping through the pages, I felt a mixture of emotions: sadness, regret, but also a sense of closure. I realized that those memories, while painful, had shaped me into the person I was today. With a deep breath, I closed the album and put it back in the box. The past was behind me, and I was ready to fully embrace the present and the future. I had learned that life is too short to dwell on what cannot be changed. Instead, I chose to focus on the love and happiness that I had found, and to cherish every moment with the person who had brought light back into my life. As the years went by, our relationship only grew stronger. We faced challenges together, supporting each other through the ups and downs. We celebrated each other's successes and provided comfort during times of hardship. The bond we shared was unbreakable, forged through mutual respect and unwavering commitment. Looking back on my journey, I realized how far I had come. The pain and betrayal of my past had given way to a life filled with love, purpose, and fulfillment. I had learned valuable lessons about trust, resilience, and the importance of choosing a partner who truly values you for who you are. In the end, I was grateful for the experiences that had shaped me. They had taught me to appreciate the simple, genuine moments of life and to cherish the people who truly mattered. I knew that I had found something rare and precious, and I was determined to never take it for granted. The scars of the past remained, but they no longer defined me. They were a part of my story, a testament to my strength and resilience. And as I stood on the porch with the woman I loved, watching the sunset and looking forward to the future, I knew that I'd finally found my place in the world. I was home. Even in the quiet moments of reflection, I often thought about the choices we make and how they shape our lives. It wasn't just about the people we let into our hearts, but also about the values and priorities we hold. My ex-wife's desire for material possessions and status had ultimately led to her unhappiness, a cautionary tale that reminded me to stay true to what really mattered. In my new relationship, we focused on experiences rather than things. We traveled to new places, created memories that would last a lifetime, and supported each other's dreams. Our bond was not built on fleeting desires, but on a deep understanding and mutual respect. This foundation made all the difference. Every now and then, I would receive updates about my ex-wife through mutual friends. It seemed that her second marriage was rocky, plagued by the same issues that had doomed ours. There were rumors of infidelity, arguments over money, and a general sense of dissatisfaction. It was a stark reminder that chasing superficial happiness often leads to emptiness. Despite the pain she had caused me, I found that I no longer harbored any ill will towards her. Instead, I felt a sense of pity. She had made her choices, and she was living with the consequences. Meanwhile, I had found a path to true contentment, one that wasn't dependent on material wealth or societal status. As I continued to grow and evolve, I also made it a point to give back to others, I started mentoring young professionals, sharing my experiences and the lessons I had learned. I wanted to help them navigate their own challenges and avoid the pitfalls that had once ensnared me. It was a rewarding experience, one that gave my life additional meaning and purpose. Through this journey, I discovered the importance of self-care and self-love. I took time to nurture my own well-being, whether it was through exercise, meditation, or simply enjoying a good book. I realized that in order to be a good partner, friend, and mentor, I needed to take care of myself first. This balance was crucial to maintaining a healthy and fulfilling life. The next few years were filled with both challenges and triumphs. As we settled into our lives together, my partner and I found that our bond only grew stronger with each passing day. We faced life's ups and downs as a team, always supporting each other and finding joy in the small moments. One significant milestone was when we decided to start our own business. It was a dream we both shared, and after many late-night discussions and careful planning, we took the leap. We poured our savings and energy into creating something we were both passionate about. The process was exhausting but exhilarating, and it brought us even closer together. Starting a business was not without its hurdles. We encountered financial strains, long hours, and the constant pressure to succeed. There were moments of doubt and stress, but we never let them overshadow our commitment to each other and our shared vision. We learned to lean on each other, to communicate openly about our fears and hopes, and to celebrate every small victory. As the business grew, so did our sense of accomplishment. We hired our first employees, expanded our product line, and began to see the fruits of our labor. The success of the business was a testament to our hard work and determination, and it reinforced the strength of our partnership. We weren't just building a company, we were building a life together. During this time, we also made an effort to give back to the community. We organized charity events, volunteered our time, and supported local causes. This gave us a sense of purpose beyond our personal achievements and allowed us to connect with others in meaningful ways. It was fulfilling to see the positive impact we could make, and it deepened our appreciation for the life we were creating. Our social circle expanded as well. We made new friends through our business and community involvement, and we nurtured these relationships with the same care and attention we gave to our own. Hosting dinners, attending gatherings, and going on trips with friends became a regular part of our lives, adding a rich social dimension to our partnership. Amidst all this, we never lost sight of the importance of quality time together. We made it a point to take regular breaks from work to enjoy each other's company. Weekend getaways, quiet evenings at home, and spontaneous adventures kept the spark alive. These moments of connection were vital in maintaining the balance between our professional and personal lives. One particularly memorable trip was a surprise vacation my partner planned for our anniversary. We traveled to a remote cabin in the mountains, far away from the hustle and bustle of our daily lives. The week we spent there was magical. We hiked through breathtaking landscapes, cooked meals together, and spent our nights by the fireplace, talking about our dreams for the future. It was a reminder of why we had fallen in love in the first place and how far we had come since then. As the business continued to thrive, we began to think about our long-term goals. We discussed the possibility of starting a family and what that would mean for our lives. It was a big decision, but we approached it with the same thoughtful consideration we gave to everything else. We wanted to be sure we were ready, not just financially, but emotionally and logistically. We also talked about the legacy we wanted to leave behind. Beyond the success of our business, we wanted to be remembered for the positive impact we had on those around us. This led us to invest more in mentorship and community projects, ensuring that our contributions would outlast our lifetimes. Throughout these discussions, we continued to nurture our relationship. We attended couples retreats and workshops, always looking for ways to strengthen our bond and improve our communication. It wasn't that we were struggling. We just believed that a relationship, like anything valuable, required continuous effort and care. One of the most profound moments came during a retreat where we were asked to write letters to each other, expressing our deepest feelings and hopes for the future. Reading her letter, I was moved to tears by her words of love and appreciation. She spoke of her admiration for my resilience, her gratitude for our life together, and her excitement for the future we were building. In my letter, I shared my profound respect for her strength and kindness, and my unwavering commitment to our shared journey. This exercise brought us even closer, reaffirming our love and dedication to each other. It was a powerful reminder that, despite the challenges and busyness of life, our relationship remained the foundation of everything we did. As the years went on, we continued to grow, both individually and as a couple. We faced new challenges with confidence, knowing that we had each other's backs. Our love deepened, enriched by the experiences we shared and the obstacles we overcame together. Eventually, we decided it was time to expand our family. The decision was made with careful thought and a deep sense of readiness. When we welcomed our first child, it was a transformative experience. The love we felt for this new life was overwhelming, and it brought a new dimension to our relationship. Parenthood came with its own set of challenges, but we faced them with the same teamwork and dedication that had guided us through everything else. We supported each other through sleepless nights, first steps, and all the milestones that marked our child's growth. It was a journey that required patience, sacrifice, and a lot of love, but it was also incredibly rewarding. Balancing our roles as parents and business owners was not easy, but we made it work. We leaned on each other, shared responsibilities, and made sure to carve out time for our relationship. Our child became a source of immense joy and a reminder of the beautiful life we were building together. In the quiet moments, as I watched our child play or listened to my partner's laughter, I felt a deep sense of contentment. Life had taken us on a journey I could never have imagined, filled with unexpected twists and turns. But through it all, we had found love, purpose, and fulfillment. Reflecting on the past, I realized how much I had grown. The pain and betrayal I once experienced had taught me invaluable lessons about resilience, trust, and the true meaning of love. I had learned to cherish the present and to build a future based on genuine connection and shared values. Looking ahead, I knew there would be more challenges to face and more dreams to pursue. But with my partner by my side, I felt ready for anything. Together, we had created a life filled with love, laughter, and a deep sense of purpose. And for that, I was eternally grateful. It all started innocuously enough. There were no dramatic changes, no sudden arguments or cold shoulders. Just subtle shifts, small changes in behavior that were easy to overlook at first. She had started working later, coming home tired and distracted. Her phone, once left casually on the kitchen counter, was now always within arm's reach. I didn't think much of it initially. We all have busy periods at work. But the signs began to accumulate. A missed dinner here, a forgotten anniversary there. It wasn't until I found myself alone on a Friday night, with a cold plate of food in front of me and an empty chair across the table, that the nagging doubts began to solidify into something more. The following weekend, we attended a friend's barbecue. It was the first time in a long while that we were out together, surrounded by friends and familiar faces. I tried to push my suspicions to the back of my mind, to enjoy the moment. But as the evening progressed, I couldn't help but notice the way she laughed a little too hard at someone else's joke, or the way her hand lingered a little too long on someone else's arm. It was on the drive home that night that I decided to confront her. I chose my words carefully, trying to mask my growing unease with a veneer of casual curiosity. "You've been working a lot lately," I began, keeping my eyes on the road. "Everything okay at the office?" She hesitated just for a moment before replying. "Yes, it's just been really busy. You know how it is." I nodded, but her answer did little to soothe my worries. The days that followed were filled with more of the same. Late nights, hushed phone calls, and a growing distance between us. The more I tried to bridge the gap, the wider it seemed to grow. One evening, while she was in the shower, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I glanced at it, my heart pounding in my chest. It was a message from a number I didn't recognize. The preview text read, "Can't wait to see you again." My blood ran cold. I knew I shouldn't invade her privacy, but the gnawing suspicion was too strong to ignore. I unlocked her phone, hands shaking. The messages were all there, a string of texts and photos exchanged with someone she had clearly grown very close to. My heart sank as I read the words, each one a dagger to my chest. The shower stopped, and I quickly put the phone back, trying to compose myself. When she walked into the room, I could barely look at her. She noticed my tension, asked if everything was all right. I forced a smile and nodded, but inside my world was crumbling. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The evidence was undeniable. She was cheating. The realization hit me like a freight train. I'd always believed that our relationship was built on trust and honesty. To find out that it was all a lie was devastating. Over the next few days, I grappled with how to confront her. Part of me wanted to scream and yell, to demand answers, but another part of me was too hurt, too broken to face the truth head on. I needed more proof, something concrete to confirm what I already knew in my heart, so I started paying closer attention. I noted the times she left the house, the excuses she made. I even followed her once, my heart pounding in my chest as I trailed her car at a safe distance. She drove to a hotel, met with the man I had seen in the photos. They embraced in the parking lot. Dear viewers, more than 90% watch my content without subscribing. If you still have not subscribed, then I ask you to do so. For me, this is the best motivation to continue. Before heading inside, it was all the proof I needed. I confronted her that night. The words spilled out of me, a torrent of anger and pain. She denied it at first, but when I showed her the evidence, her facade crumbled. She admitted to everything, tears streaming down her face as she tried to explain. "It's not what you think," she pleaded. "I never meant to hurt you, it just happened." But her words meant nothing to me. The trust was shattered, the bond broken. I couldn't see past the betrayal, couldn't forgive the lies. I moved out that weekend, leaving behind the life we had built together. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. I was alone, adrift in a sea of emotions, anger, sadness, betrayal. I replayed the events over and over in my mind, trying to understand where it all went wrong. Friends and family reached out, offering support and sympathy, but their words did little to ease the pain. I had to find my own way through the darkness, to rebuild my life from the ground up. I threw myself into work, into hobbies, anything to keep my mind occupied. Slowly, the wounds began to heal. I started to find a new rhythm, a new normal. I even began dating again, though it was a long time before I could fully trust anyone. Looking back, I can see the signs more clearly now. The small changes, the little lies. In hindsight, it all seems so obvious. But at the time, I was too blind to see it, too wrapped up in my own version of reality. I've learned a lot from the experience. About myself, about relationships, about trust. It's a hard lesson, one I wouldn't wish on anyone. But it has made me stronger, more resilient. I've come to realize that life goes on, even after the most painful of betrayals. And so, I continue to move forward, one day at a time. The scars are still there, but they no longer define me. I've found a new sense of purpose, a new appreciation for the simple things in life. And for that, I am grateful. As the weeks turned into months, the initial shock of the betrayal began to fade, replaced by a dull ache that was always there, lurking in the background. I threw myself into my work, taking on extra projects and longer hours. The office became a sanctuary, a place where I could lose myself in tasks and deadlines, and for a while it worked. My colleagues noticed the change in me. They could see the tiredness in my eyes, the way I buried myself in work. Some asked if I was okay, but I brushed off their concerns with a forced smile and a quick nod. I didn't want to talk about it. Talking about it made it real, and I was still grappling with the reality of it all. Socially, I became more withdrawn. I declined invitations to parties and gatherings, preferring the solitude of my apartment. The few friends I did see tried to offer support, but their well-meaning advice often fell flat. They couldn't understand what I was going through. Not really. It's easy to say move on, or you deserve better, when you're not the one picking up the pieces of a shattered life. Despite my best efforts to numb the pain, there were moments when it all came crashing down. A song on the radio, a couple holding hands, the smell of her favorite perfume lingering in a department store. Each little reminder was like a knife to the heart, reopening wounds that I was desperately trying to heal. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, I found myself sitting in a dimly lit bar, nursing a drink. The bartender, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, seemed to sense my mood. He didn't ask questions, just kept my glass filled and offered a sympathetic smile. It was a small comfort, but in that moment, it meant a lot. As I sat there, staring into the amber liquid, I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the lies, the heartbreak. It was a lot to process, and I was still struggling to make sense of it all. How could someone I loved so deeply, someone I trusted implicitly, do something so hurtful? I knew I had to find a way to move on, to let go of the anger and resentment that were eating away at me. But it was easier said than done. The betrayal had shaken me to my core, and rebuilding that trust felt like an insurmountable task. The turning point came a few weeks later, during a conversation with an old friend. He had been through a similar experience and had come out the other side stronger and more resilient. We talked for hours, sharing our stories, our pain, and our hopes for the future. It was the first time I felt truly understood, and it gave me a glimmer of hope. "You're stronger than you think," he told me. "It doesn't feel like it now, but you are. And one day you'll look back on this and realize it made you a better person." His words stuck with me. I realized that I had a choice. I could let the betrayal define me, let it turn me into someone bitter and resentful, or I could use it as a catalyst for growth, a chance to rebuild my life on my terms. I decided to choose the latter. I started taking care of myself again, both physically and mentally. I joined a gym, started eating healthier, and made a conscious effort to reconnect with friends and family. I also sought out therapy, which proved to be incredibly helpful. Talking to a professional helped me unpack the complex emotions I was dealing with, and gave me tools to cope with the pain. As the months went by, I began to feel more like myself again. Dear viewers, I ask you to subscribe to the channel under this video. I will be very grateful to you. Pain was still there, but it was no longer all-consuming. I started to find joy in the little things, like a walk in the park or a good book. I even started dating again, though I approached it with caution. Trust was something that would take time to rebuild, but I was willing to try. One evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, I reflected on the journey I had been through. It had been a long and painful road, but I had come out the other side stronger and more resilient. I had learned valuable lessons about trust, love, and the importance of self-worth. I knew that I would never be the same person I was before the betrayal, but that was okay. I was stronger now, more aware of my own needs and boundaries. I had learned to prioritize myself, to find happiness from within rather than relying on someone else to provide it. Life, I realized, is full of unexpected twists and turns. We can't control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond. The betrayal had been a painful chapter in my life, but it didn't have to define the rest of my story. With a sense of peace and acceptance, I looked forward to the future. I didn't know what it held, but I was ready to face it head-on. I was ready to find happiness again on my terms. Months turned into a year, and I found myself in a much better place. The ache in my chest had dulled to a distant memory, a reminder of a past that no longer held power over me. I had rebuilt my life, piece by piece, and in the process, discovered a strength I never knew I had. Work was going well. I had been promoted, a testament to the long hours and dedication I had poured into my job. My colleagues had become a second family, their support invaluable during the darkest days. I had also rekindled old friendships and made new ones, expanding my social circle in ways I hadn't expected. Dating was still a challenge, but I was more confident now. I had learned to set boundaries, to communicate openly, and to trust my instincts. I met a few women, some dates more successful than others. Each experience taught me something new about myself and what I was looking for in a partner. One evening, while attending a friend's party, I met someone who would change my life in ways I couldn't have imagined. She was different from anyone I had met before. There was an ease to our conversation, a genuine connection that felt both comforting and exhilarating. We talked for hours, lost in each other's stories and laughter. As the weeks turned into months, our relationship blossomed. It was unlike anything I had experienced before. There was trust, mutual respect, and a deep understanding that we were both building something new together. The scars from the past were still there, but they no longer defined me. Instead, they served as a reminder of how far I had come. Our relationship grew stronger with each passing day. We traveled together, explored new hobbies, and supported each other's dreams. There were challenges, of course, but we faced them together, always communicating openly and honestly. One evening, as we sat on the balcony of our new apartment, watching the city lights twinkle below, I realized how far I had come. The betrayal that once consumed me was now a distant memory, a chapter in my life that had shaped me but no longer defined me. I looked at the woman beside me, her hand in mine, and felt a profound sense of gratitude. She had come into my life when I least expected it, and together, we had created something beautiful. I knew that the future held its own challenges and uncertainties, but for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to face them. Life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. The pain of betrayal had been a dark chapter in my life, but it had also been a catalyst for growth and self-discovery. It had taught me the importance of resilience, self-worth, and the power of love. As I sat there surrounded by the warmth of her presence and the beauty of the city below, I realized that I had found something truly special. Not just in her, but in myself. I had learned to trust again, to love again, and most importantly, to find happiness from within. The journey had been long and painful, but it had also been transformative. I was no longer the person I was before the betrayal, but I was stronger, wiser, and more resilient. I had found a new sense of purpose and a new appreciation for the simple joys of life. Looking back, I can see the path that led me here, the heartbreak, the pain, the healing. It had all been a part of my journey. And as I looked forward to the future, I felt a sense of excitement and hope. I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them with an open heart and a resilient spirit. Life is full of unexpected twists and turns, but it is also full of possibilities. The betrayal had been a painful chapter, but it had also been a turning point. It had led me to discover my own strength, to rebuild my life, and to find a love that was true and lasting. As I sat there, hand in hand with the woman who had come to mean so much to me, I felt a deep sense of peace and contentment. The past was behind me, and the future was full of promise. I had learned to trust again, to love again, and to find joy in the simple moments of life. And for that, I was truly grateful. The process of moving on, however, was not a straight path. There were setbacks, moments of doubt, and times when the past seemed to rear its ugly head. Old memories would resurface at the most inconvenient times, pulling me back into a spiral of sadness and anger. But each time, I learned to navigate through these feelings, emerging a bit stronger each time. One of the most significant turning points in my journey came when I decided to confront my ex-wife. It had been over a year since we had last spoken, and I felt that I needed closure. There were questions that had haunted me, questions that needed answers if I were to fully move on. We met in a quiet cafe, a neutral ground where we could talk without the baggage of our shared history overwhelming us. As I sat across from her, I realized just how much I had changed. I was no longer the broken man she had left behind. I had rebuilt my life, found a new sense of purpose, and was ready to face the past head-on. The conversation was difficult. We revisited the pain and betrayal. But this time, it felt different. I wasn't looking for an apology or a way to fix things. I was seeking understanding, a way to make peace with what had happened. She explained her reasons, the loneliness she had felt, the disconnect that had grown between us. It didn't excuse her actions, but it helped me understand that the fault wasn't entirely one-sided. As we parted ways that day, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The closure I had sought was not in the answers she gave, but in the realization that I had the power to forgive and let go. Holding on to the anger and resentment had only been hurting me, and I was ready to release it. My relationship with the new woman in my life continued to flourish. We had built a strong foundation based on trust and mutual respect. She knew about my past, and I knew about hers. We were open and honest with each other, and that honesty was the bedrock of our relationship. We supported each other through the highs and lows, always communicating and never letting small issues fester. We decided to move in together after a year of dating. It was a big step, but it felt right. We chose a cozy apartment in a vibrant part of the city, a place where we could start fresh and build new memories together. The process of moving in, decorating, and making the space our own was a joyful experience. It was a symbol of our commitment to each other and our shared future. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. We both had our careers, our hobbies, and our friends, but we always made time for each other. We traveled, explored new places, and tried new things. Each experience brought us closer, solidifying the bond we shared. But life, as always, had its challenges. There were disagreements, misunderstandings, and moments of tension. But unlike before, we faced these challenges together, with patience and understanding. We had learned that communication was key, and we never let a day end without resolving any issues that arose. Our relationship was not perfect, but it was real. It was built on a foundation of trust that had been hard-earned. The scars from my past were still there, but they were no longer wounds. They were reminders of how far I had come and how much I had grown. One evening, as we sat on the balcony of our apartment, watching the sun set over the city, she turned to me with a smile. "I'm happy," she said simply. I looked at her, the woman who had brought so much light into my life, and felt a profound sense of gratitude. "I am too," I replied, meaning it with every fiber of my being. The journey from betrayal to healing had been long and arduous, but it had also been transformative. I had learned to trust again, to love again, and most importantly, to find happiness within myself. The betrayal had been a dark chapter, but it had also led me to a place of strength and resilience. As I sat there, hand in hand with the woman I loved, I realized that I was exactly where I was meant to be. The past was behind me, and the future was full of promise. I had found peace, love, and a sense of fulfillment that I had thought was lost forever. Life is unpredictable and often unfair, but it is also full of opportunities for growth and renewal. The betrayal had been a painful lesson, but it had also been a catalyst for change. It had led me to discover my own strength, to rebuild my life, and to find a love that was true and lasting. And as I looked forward to the future, I felt a sense of excitement and hope. I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them with an open heart and a resilient spirit. I had learned to trust again, to love again, and to find joy in the simple moments of life. And for that, I was truly grateful. It's a strange feeling, catching your wife cheating on you. It's not something that happens overnight. It's a slow burn, an accumulation of little signs that finally catch up to you. I'm not proud of how I handled it, but in the end, I did what I thought was best. This is my story. I'm a 38-year-old man who had been married to his wife for nearly 15 years. We met in college, and things were great at first. We built a life together, moved into a cozy home in the suburbs, and even started a small business that was doing fairly well. I thought we had it all. But looking back, maybe I should have seen the signs earlier. The first hint of trouble came about a year ago. My wife started staying late at work more often, claiming she had meetings and deadlines to meet. At first, I didn't think much of it. She's always been a hard worker, and I admired that about her. But soon, the late nights turned into weekends, and her stories began to feel rehearsed. One night, after another meeting that kept her out until 11 p.m., I decided to do a little digging. I wasn't proud of it, but I went through her phone. What I found were countless messages between her and a man named Jake. They were intimate. My heart sank. I felt betrayed, angry, but most of all, I felt like a fool. How could I not see this coming? I confronted her the next day. She denied it at first, said they were just friends. But the evidence was overwhelming. Eventually, she broke down and admitted she had been seeing him for 6 months. I wanted to scream, to throw things, to hit something. But I didn't. Instead, I asked her why. She said she felt neglected, that our relationship had become stale, and she found excitement with him. It felt like a knife to the heart. I needed time to think. I couldn't just throw away 15 years of marriage over this, could I? I decided to take a week off work and stay with a friend. During that week, I did a lot of soul-searching. I thought about the good times, the bad times, and everything in between. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get past the betrayal. When I returned home, we tried counseling. I wanted to make it work, but every time I looked at her, all I could see was her with him. The sessions were tense, filled with arguments and accusations. It wasn't working. One night, things took a turn for the worse. I came home early from work, hoping to surprise her with dinner. Instead, I found her in our bedroom, talking to him on the phone. She didn't hear me come in, and I listened to their conversation. They were planning to meet up that weekend. I saw red. I walked into the room, grabbed the phone from her hand, and threw it against the wall. She screamed, more in shock than fear. We had the biggest fight of our lives that night. It got physical. I pushed her against the wall, demanding to know why she was still seeing him. She fought back, hitting me in the chest, screaming that she loved him. That was the last straw. I packed a bag and left. I spent the next few days at a motel, trying to figure out what to do next. I contacted a lawyer and started the divorce proceedings. It was messy. She fought me on everything: the house, the business, even our dog. It was like she wanted to hurt me as much as possible. Then came the blackmail. One day, I received an email from an unknown address. It contained pictures of me in compromising situations from years ago, before we were even married. The email threatened to send them to my family, my friends, and even post them online if I didn't agree to her terms. I was furious. I knew she had taken those pictures, but I never thought she would stoop this low. I decided to call her bluff. I forwarded the email to my lawyer and Dear viewers, more than 90% watch my content without subscribing. If you still have not subscribed, then I ask you to do so. For me, this is the best motivation to continue. We contacted the authorities. It was a long and drawn-out process, but eventually we were able to trace the email back to her. She was arrested for extortion. That was the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. I got the house, the business, and the dog. She got some money and a restraining order. It wasn't the ending I had hoped for, but it was over. In the end, I learned a lot about myself and what I'm willing to tolerate. I'm not perfect, and I know I made mistakes too. But I'm moving on. I've started dating again, and while it's not easy, I'm hopeful. I know now what I want in a partner and what I won't stand for. Maybe one day I'll find someone who will appreciate me for who I am and not look for excitement elsewhere. But until then, I'm focusing on myself and my happiness, and that's enough for now. A few months after the divorce, life started to take on a new rhythm. I poured myself into work, expanding the business, and took up hobbies that I had neglected for years. Weekends were filled with hiking, fishing, and reconnecting with old friends. It was therapeutic in a way. Each day felt like a step towards reclaiming my life. One evening I received a call from an unknown number. Usually I'd ignore such calls, but something compelled me to answer. It was Jake, the man who had torn my marriage apart. My heart raced, a mix of anger and curiosity bubbling up inside me. Why was he calling? "Hey, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to talk to you," he said, his voice hesitant. "What could you possibly have to say to me?" I spat out, struggling to keep my composure. "It's about her. She's been blackmailing me too. I thought we could, I don't know, compare notes or something. Figure out what to do." I was stunned. It hadn't crossed my mind that she might be manipulating him as well. Reluctantly, I agreed to meet him. We chose a neutral spot, a quiet bar on the outskirts of town. Jake was already there when I arrived, nursing a drink and looking more defeated than I had imagined. We sat down, and he started to spill everything. She had been using him, just like she had used me. He showed me texts and emails where she threatened to expose their affair to his wife unless he complied with her demands. As much as I hated to admit it, I felt a twinge of sympathy for him. He was as much a victim in this as I was. We spent hours talking, sharing our stories, and plotting our next steps. It was surreal, forming an alliance with the man who had been my enemy. But we both had a common goal: to put an end to her manipulation. Together, we gathered all the evidence we could find: emails, texts, even recordings of phone calls. We compiled everything and went to the authorities. The process was grueling, but eventually they launched an investigation. It wasn't long before she was arrested again, this time with a much stronger case against her. With her out of the picture, a sense of peace finally settled over me. It was a strange kind of closure, knowing that she couldn't hurt anyone else. Jake and I went our separate ways after that, but there was an unspoken understanding between us. We had both been through hell, but we had come out stronger on the other side. Life continued to improve, the business flourished, and I found myself enjoying the single life more than I had anticipated. I started traveling, exploring places I had always wanted to visit. Each trip felt like a new adventure, a way to rediscover myself. Then, one day, I met someone. It was unexpected, as these things often are. She was a friend of a friend, someone I had seen at various gatherings but never really spoken to. We hit it off instantly. There was a spark, something I hadn't felt in a long time. We started dating, and for the first time in years, I felt truly happy. As our relationship blossomed, I found myself reflecting on the past less and less. It was as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I realized that I had been given a second chance at happiness, and I wasn't going to waste it. We moved in together after a year, and life took on a new kind of normal. It was different, but in a good way. We supported each other, communicated openly, and most importantly, trusted one another. It was everything I had been missing before. Looking back, I can see how far I've come. The pain of the past has faded, replaced by a sense of gratitude for the lessons I've learned. I'm stronger now, more resilient, and I know what I want in life. It wasn't an easy journey, but it was worth it. In the end, I found happiness not in someone else, but in myself. The new relationship was the icing on the cake, a bonus that added to my already fulfilling life. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I'm excited to find out. For now, I'm content, and that's more than I could have asked for. Time passed, and my new life felt increasingly stable. My partner and I decided to buy a house together, a quaint place just outside the city with a garden and plenty of space for the dog to run around. We spent weekends renovating, painting walls, and planting flowers. It felt like we were building something solid, something lasting. But just when I thought everything was finally settling down, an unexpected visitor showed up at our doorstep. It was her, my ex-wife. She looked different, worn out, almost fragile. I felt a mix of emotions seeing her again. Anger, pity, confusion. What could she possibly want now? "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice trembling. I hesitated but decided to hear her out. We sat in the living room, an awkward silence hanging in the air. She started to apologize, tears streaming down her face. She admitted she had hit rock bottom and was trying to make amends. She wanted forgiveness, or at least some form of closure. Part of me wanted to tell her to leave, that I didn't owe her anything. But another part of me, the part that remembered the good times we had shared, felt a pang of sympathy. I listened as she explained how her life had unraveled after our divorce, how she had lost everything and was struggling to find her way back. "I'm not asking for anything," she said finally. "I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. For everything." It was a lot to process. I didn't forgive her, not entirely. But I felt a sense of relief, as if a chapter of my life was finally coming to a close. We parted ways on civil terms, and I hoped she would find the peace she was looking for. The encounter with my ex-wife brought back a lot of memories, but it also reinforced how far I had come. My new life, my new relationship, everything felt even more precious. I was determined not to let the past overshadow the present. As the years went by, my partner and I continued to grow closer. We faced challenges together, celebrated successes, and supported each other through tough times. It wasn't always perfect, but it was real, and that was enough. One summer, we decided to take a road trip across the country. It was something we had talked about doing for years, and finally, the timing felt right. We packed up the car, grabbed the dog, and set off on an adventure. The open road, the changing landscapes, the freedom. It was everything we had hoped for. We visited national parks, stayed in quirky motels, and met interesting people along the way. Each day was a new experience, a new memory to cherish. The trip brought us even closer, and by the time we returned home, we were more in love than ever. After the trip, I proposed. It felt like the right time, and I couldn't imagine spending my life with anyone else. We planned a small, intimate wedding with our closest friends and family. It was a beautiful day, filled with joy and laughter. As we exchanged vows, I knew that this time it was forever. Married life was an adventure in itself. We continued to travel, explore new hobbies, and support each other's dreams. The business flourished, and we even started a family. It wasn't always easy, but it was worth every moment. Reflecting on my journey, I realized that the pain and betrayal I had experienced had ultimately led me to a place of true happiness. I had learned to value myself, to stand up for what I deserved, and to never settle for less. The past was a part of me, but it didn't define me. Years passed, and life continued to evolve in wonderful ways. Our children grew, the business expanded, and we cherished every moment together. But life has a way of throwing curveballs. and ours came in the form of a significant health scare. I was diagnosed with a serious illness. The news was devastating, and it felt like the world had been pulled out from under me. My partner, now my wife, was my rock through it all. She stood by my side during countless doctor visits, treatments, and sleepless nights. Her strength and love were unwavering, and it gave me the courage to fight. The illness was a reminder of how fragile life can be, and it brought our family even closer. We learned to appreciate the small moments, to celebrate each day, and to never take anything for granted. It was a difficult time, but it also brought a new perspective on what truly mattered. Thankfully, after a long and arduous battle, I went into remission. The relief was indescribable, and we celebrated with a renewed sense of hope and gratitude. The experience had changed us, but in many ways, it had strengthened our bond. With a new lease on life, we decided to give back to the community that had supported us through the tough times. We started a charity aimed at helping families dealing with similar health crises. It was our way of paying it forward, of making a difference in the lives of others. The charity became a passion project, something we worked on together and found immense fulfillment in. It also brought us closer as a family, teaching our children the importance of empathy, compassion, and resilience. Looking back, I can see how every twist and turn, every high and low, had shaped our journey. From the betrayal and heartbreak of my first marriage to the incredible love and support of my second, life had been a roller coaster. But through it all, I had found strength, purpose, and true happiness. As I sit here now, reflecting on the past, I feel a deep sense of contentment. The pain of betrayal, the challenges of rebuilding, the joy of new beginnings, it all led me to where I am today. And for that, I am thankful. Life is unpredictable, filled with both beauty and hardship. But it's the people we love, the connections we make, and the resilience we show that truly define our journey. I am grateful for my family, for the love and support that has carried me through, and for the second chance at happiness that I never take for granted. Life continued with its ups and downs, but I felt grounded in my new reality. One evening, while sorting through some old boxes in the attic, I stumbled upon a photo album from my first marriage. I hadn't looked at these photos in years. As I flipped through the pages, memories came flooding back, some sweet, some painful. The album was filled with images of happier times, vacations, family gatherings, and candid moments of joy. But it also served as a reminder of the deceit and betrayal that had torn everything apart. As I closed the album, I felt a mix of nostalgia and closure. I had moved on, but it was important to remember where I had come from. That night, I shared the experience with my wife. We talked late into the night about our pasts, our fears, and our hopes for the future. It was one of those deep conversations that leave you feeling closer and more connected. We decided then that we wouldn't let the past define us, but rather let it inform how we navigated our relationship. Our life was not without its challenges. We had disagreements like any couple, sometimes over small things, sometimes over bigger issues. One argument in particular stands out. It was about money, a common source of tension in many marriages. Our business was doing well, but we had different ideas about how to manage our finances. The argument escalated quickly. Voices were raised, accusations were thrown, and for a moment, it felt like everything might fall apart. But unlike my first marriage, where such fights would fester and breed resentment, we knew how to communicate. After cooling off, we sat down and talked it out. We compromised and came to a solution that worked for both of us. It wasn't easy, but it reinforced our commitment to each other. As our children grew older, new challenges arose. Parenting is a tough job, and it tested our patience and resilience. There were late-night feedings, temper tantrums, and teenage rebellion. But there were also moments of profound joy and pride. First steps, graduations, and family vacations. Through it all, we supported each other, learning and growing together. One particularly difficult period was when our eldest child got into trouble at school. It was a wake-up call for us as parents. We had to reassess our priorities and make some tough decisions about discipline and guidance. It was a stressful time, but it also brought us closer as a family. We learned to lean on each other and to face challenges head-on, rather than avoiding them. Despite the challenges, there were moments of deep intimacy and connection. We made it a point to keep the romance alive, even amidst the chaos of daily life. Date nights, weekend getaways, and simple acts of kindness kept the spark alive. Our physical connection was an important part of our relationship, and we made sure to nurture it. One night, after a particularly stressful week, we decided to escape for a weekend. We rented a cabin in the mountains, away from the noise and distractions of everyday life. It was a chance to reconnect, to focus on each other without the usual interruptions. We spent the days hiking and the nights curled up by the fire, talking about our dreams and aspirations. That weekend was a turning point. It reminded us of why we fell in love in the first place. We returned home feeling rejuvenated and more in sync than ever. It was a reminder that no matter how busy life gets, it's crucial to make time for each other. Reflecting on my journey, I realized how far I had come from the man who discovered his wife's betrayal all those years ago. The pain and anger that once consumed me had been replaced by love and gratitude. I had built a life that I was proud of, with a partner who stood by me through thick and thin. Life is unpredictable, and we can't always control what happens to us. But we can choose how we respond. I chose to rise above the pain, to rebuild my life, and to find happiness again. And in the end, that's what matters. This is my story, a story of betrayal, heartbreak, resilience, and ultimately, redemption. It's a testament to the human spirit, to our ability to overcome adversity and find joy in the most unexpected places. And as I look forward to the future, I do so with hope and excitement, knowing that whatever comes next, we will face it together. My name is David, and this is the story of how I lost everything I once held dear. It all began back in the summer of 2010, a time when life seemed simple and full of promise. Fresh out of college, I had landed my first real job as a junior analyst at a financial firm. I was eager, ambitious, and ready to take on the world. It was at a mutual friend's barbecue where I first met Emily. She was a graphic designer, recently graduated and just starting out in her career. Unlike the other guests who were mingling and making small talk, Emily sat quietly by herself, sketching in a notebook. There was something about her serene demeanor that drew me in. I approached her, and we started talking. Our conversation flowed effortlessly. We talked about everything from our favorite books to our childhood dreams. It was as if we had known each other forever. There was an instant connection, a spark that neither of us could ignore. We started dating shortly after that barbecue. Our relationship was like a slow-burning fire, warm and steady. We took things slow, savoring every moment. After a year of dating, we moved in together. It felt right, like the natural progression of our love. Emily brought creativity and color into my otherwise structured and logical life. We balanced each other perfectly. In 2015, during a romantic trip to Paris, I proposed to Emily. It was cliché, I know, but it was perfect for us. We got married in a small ceremony surrounded by our closest friends and family. Our life together felt like a dream. We bought a house in the suburbs, adopted a golden retriever named Max, and settled into a comfortable routine. For the next few years, life was blissful. We both advanced in our careers. Emily's design business flourished, and I climbed the corporate ladder. We took vacations to exotic places, hosted dinner parties, and spent quiet nights at home watching movies. We talked about starting a family, but decided to wait a bit longer to enjoy our time together. Looking back, there were probably signs that things were not as perfect as they seemed, but I ignored them, lost in the comfort and stability of our life. Emily started working late more often. She would be glued to her phone, texting someone and quickly putting it away when I entered the room. She started going out with friends more frequently, often coming home late, smelling of alcohol and an unfamiliar cologne. I brushed off my growing unease, convincing myself that she was just busy with work and expanding her social circle. But the nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach wouldn't go away. Something was off, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something important. One evening, I came home to find Emily frantically texting on her phone. She didn't notice me at first, and I saw the name Mark on her screen before she quickly locked it and smiled at me. My heart sank. Dear viewers, more than 90% watch my content without subscribing. If you still have not subscribed, then I ask you to do so. For me, this is the best motivation to continue. Who was Mark, and why was she hiding their messages from me? I decided to investigate. Over the next few weeks, I kept a closer eye on Emily. She was more secretive than ever, and it was driving me crazy. One night, she said she was going out with her friend Lisa. After she left, I called Lisa, pretending to need Emily for something urgent. Lisa was confused and said she hadn't seen Emily in weeks. That was the confirmation I needed. Emily was lying to me. I felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and sadness. I decided to follow her the next time she went out. It didn't take long. That Friday, she said she had a late meeting with a client. I followed her to a fancy restaurant, where she met a man, Mark. Seeing them together was like a punch to the gut. They were laughing, touching, and clearly more than just friends. I took pictures, my hands shaking with rage and disbelief. I felt like a fool. All the late nights, the secret texts, the lies, it all made sense now. I confronted Emily the next morning. I showed her the pictures and demanded an explanation. She tried to deny it at first, but the evidence was irrefutable. She broke down, admitting she had been seeing Mark for months. She said she didn't mean for it to happen, that she still loved me, but she couldn't help her feelings for him. I was numb. I didn't know what to do or say. I felt like my world was falling apart. I left the house needing space to think. I spent the day driving aimlessly, trying to process everything. How could she do this to me? To us? The days following the confrontation were a blur. Emily and I tried to talk, but every conversation ended in shouting and tears. She said she was confused, that she didn't know what she wanted. I told her I couldn't live like this, that I needed to know if she was committed to fixing our marriage or if she wanted to be with Mark. Emily decided to move out for a while to figure things out. I was devastated but agreed, hoping that some time apart would help us both see things more clearly. But the separation only made things worse. Emily continued to see Mark, and it became clear that she had already made her choice. I filed for divorce a month later. It was the hardest decision I've ever made, but I knew it was the right one. The divorce process was long and painful. We argued over everything: the house, the dog, our belongings. Every meeting with our lawyers felt like a fresh wound being opened. During this time, I discovered more about Emily and Mark's affair. It turned out that Mark was not just any man. He was her business partner. They had started the affair during a business trip. The betrayal cut even deeper, knowing that it wasn't just a random fling, but a relationship built over time, right under my nose. One day, I decided to confront Mark. I needed to understand how this had all happened. We met at a coffee shop. He was surprisingly open about everything, almost smug. He said that he and Emily had fallen in love, and that he believed she would eventually leave me for him. His confidence was infuriating. I wanted to punch him, to make him feel the pain I was going through, but I held back. Emily and I continued to live separately as the divorce proceedings dragged on. I felt lost and alone. I threw myself into work, trying to drown out the pain. My friends and family were supportive, but it was hard to talk about what I was going through. I felt like I had failed, like I wasn't good enough to keep my wife's love. One night, I received a call from Emily. She was crying, saying that she had made a mistake and wanted to come back. She said that her relationship with Mark wasn't what she thought it would be. Dear viewers, I ask you to subscribe to the channel under this video. I will be very grateful to you. Missed me and our life together. Part of me wanted to believe her, to welcome her back with open arms. But another part of me, the rational part, knew that too much had happened. The trust was gone, and without trust, there could be no future for us. I told her that I needed more time to think. I hung up, feeling more conflicted than ever. I decided to seek professional help, to talk to a therapist about everything I was going through. It was a difficult step to take, but it was necessary. I needed to understand my own feelings, to process the betrayal and the loss. Therapy helped me see things more clearly. I realized that while Emily's betrayal was devastating, it didn't define me. I was more than just a man who had been cheated on. I had my own strengths, my own worth. I deserved someone who would love and respect me fully, not someone who would betray me for another man. As the divorce finalized, I started to rebuild my life. I moved out of our house and into a small apartment downtown. It was a fresh start, a chance to rediscover who I was without Emily. I reconnected with old friends, picked up hobbies I had neglected, and even started dating again. The day the divorce was finalized, I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. Our 10 years together had come to an end. I moved out of our house and into a small apartment downtown. It was a fresh start, but it felt lonely and hollow. Emily tried to reach out a few times, but I couldn't bring myself to talk to her. I needed to move on, to heal. I threw myself into my work, spent time with friends, and picked up old hobbies. Slowly, I began to rebuild my life. Now, a year later, I'm doing better. The pain is still there, but it's not as sharp. I've started dating again, cautiously opening myself up to the possibility of new relationships. I've learned a lot about myself through this process. I've realized my worth, and that I deserve someone who loves and respects me fully. To those reading my story, I ask for your advice. Have any of you been through something similar? How did you cope? How did you move on? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences. Maybe we can help each other heal. Thank you for listening. The weeks following Emily's departure were a haze of confusion and anger. I buried myself in work, trying to escape the constant churn of thoughts about our failed marriage. The office became my refuge, a place where I could lose myself in spreadsheets and data. But even there, I couldn't escape completely. Colleagues would ask about Emily, about why I seemed so distracted. I told them we were having problems, keeping the details vague. One evening, I came home to find a letter in the mail. It was from Emily. My heart pounded as I opened it, expecting another plea for forgiveness or an explanation. Instead, it was a legal document, a formal request for divorce mediation. It was clear that she was moving forward, and I had no choice but to do the same. During the mediation sessions, Emily was distant and cold. She was no longer the woman I had fallen in love with. She was a stranger, someone who had hurt me in ways I never thought possible. Our discussions were terse and professional, focused on dividing assets and finalizing the separation. Every now and then, she would glance at me with a look that seemed to mix regret and determination. Amidst all this, Mark's presence loomed over everything. I knew they were still seeing each other. It was impossible to ignore. Friends would tell me about seeing them together, looking happy and carefree. It was like a dagger to my heart every time I heard about it. I felt like I was living in a nightmare, unable to wake up. One night, unable to sleep, I decided to confront Emily once more. I needed closure, something to help me understand why she had done this. I called her, asking if we could meet. To my surprise, she agreed. We met at a quiet cafe we used to frequent. The familiar surroundings brought back a flood of memories, but I pushed them aside. Emily arrived looking tired, as if the weight of her decisions was finally catching up with her. "Why, Emily?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why did you do this to us?" She sighed, looking down at her coffee cup. "David, I don't know. I was unhappy. I felt trapped. And then Mark came along and he made me feel alive again." "Alive?" I scoffed. "What about us? What about everything we built together?" "I'm sorry," she said, her eyes welling up with tears. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I never wanted this to happen." Her apology felt hollow, like a bandage on a deep wound. We sat in silence for a while, each lost in our thoughts. It was clear that there was no going back. The love we once shared was gone, replaced by bitterness and pain. As the divorce proceedings continued, I started receiving strange messages. They were anonymous, cryptic, and threatening. At first, I thought it was just a prank, but then they started getting more personal. The messages hinted at secrets, things only Emily and I knew. I began to suspect that Mark was behind them, trying to intimidate me or push me over the edge. I decided to hire a private investigator to dig into Mark's past. If he was going to play dirty, so would I. The investigator uncovered some interesting information. Mark had a history of deceit and manipulation. He had been involved in several business scandals, always managing to slip away unscathed. It seemed he was a master at hiding his true nature. Armed with this information, I confronted Mark. We met in a parking lot, away from prying eyes. He was smug, confident that he had won. But as I laid out everything I had learned, his demeanor changed. He became defensive, angry. "You think you can scare me, David?" he spat. "You're just a pathetic loser who couldn't keep his wife." "Maybe," I replied calmly, "but at least I'm not a fraud." The confrontation didn't go as I had hoped. Mark was too slippery, too practiced at evasion. But it felt good to stand up to him, to show him that I wasn't afraid. I hoped that maybe it would give him pause, make him think twice about continuing his games. As the final court date approached, I started to feel a sense of closure. The past year had been a nightmare, but I was ready to put it behind me. I had survived the worst, and I was ready to move on. Emily and I had one last meeting before the divorce was finalized. It was at our house, the place we had called home for so many years. We walked through the empty rooms, reminiscing about the good times. It was bittersweet, a reminder of what we had lost. "David," she said softly, "I really am sorry. For everything." "I know," I replied. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Emily. I really do." With that, we said our final goodbyes. The divorce was finalized the next day, and I walked out of the courthouse a free man. It was over. The chapter of my life with Emily had ended, and a new one was beginning. The months following the divorce were a period of intense reflection and self-discovery. I had been through hell and back, but I had survived. Now it was time to rebuild, to find out who I was without Emily. I started by making small changes. I redecorated my apartment, creating a space that felt like mine. I joined a gym, focusing on my physical health as a way to cope with the emotional turmoil. I reconnected with friends and family, leaning on them for support and companionship. I also threw myself into my work. My career had always been important to me, but now it became a lifeline. I worked long hours, taking on new projects and challenges. It was a way to keep my mind occupied, to avoid dwelling on the past. But no matter how busy I kept myself, there were still moments of profound loneliness. Nights when I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what went wrong. I missed the companionship, the feeling of having someone to share my life with. It was a void that no amount of work or socializing could fill. One evening, as I was sorting through old photos, I found a picture of Emily and me from our honeymoon. We looked so happy, so in love. I felt a pang of sadness, but also a sense of acceptance. That chapter of my life was over. It was time to let go and move forward. I decided to take a trip, something I had always wanted to do but had never found the time for. I booked a flight to Japan, a place that had always fascinated me. The culture, the history, the food, it was the perfect escape. The trip was transformative. I immersed myself in the experience, exploring ancient temples, bustling cities, and serene landscapes. I met new people, made friends, and even had a brief romance with a fellow traveler. It was a reminder that life was still full of possibilities, that there was so much more to see and do. When I returned home, I felt rejuvenated. The trip had given me a new perspective, a sense of hope. I was ready to start anew, to embrace the future with open arms. I decided to get back into dating. It was daunting at first, but I knew it was a step I needed to take. I joined a few dating apps, went on a few dates. Some were awkward, others were pleasant. I met interesting people, shared laughs, and even had a few sparks. It wasn't easy, but it was a start. One evening I matched with a woman named Sarah. She was intelligent, kind, and had a great sense of humor. We met for coffee, and the connection was immediate. We talked for hours, sharing stories and dreams. It was refreshing to meet someone who seemed to understand me, who made me feel valued. Sarah and I started seeing each other regularly. It was slow and steady, but it felt right. She knew about my past, about Emily, and she was patient and understanding. For the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about love. As my relationship with Sarah blossomed, I continued to work on myself. I attended therapy sessions, focusing on healing and personal growth. I learned to forgive myself for the mistakes I had made, to let go of the anger and resentment. I also took up new hobbies. I started painting, something I had always wanted to try but had never had the time for. It became a therapeutic outlet, a way to express my emotions and creativity. I joined a local art group, made new friends, and even showcased my work at a small gallery. Life was finally starting to feel normal again. I had found a new rhythm, a new purpose. I was happy, or at least on the path to happiness. One day, out of the blue, I received a message from Emily. She wanted to meet, to catch up. I was hesitant, unsure if I was ready to face her again, but curiosity got the better of me, and I agreed. We met at the same cafe where we had our last conversation before the divorce. Emily looked different, older, more subdued. We talked about our lives, about the changes we had gone through. She told me about her struggles, about how things with Mark hadn't worked out. She seemed regretful, almost nostalgic. As we talked, I realized that I'd moved on. The pain and anger I once felt were gone, replaced by a sense of closure. Emily was a part of my past, but she no longer had power over my present or future. "I'm glad you're doing well, David," she said as we parted ways. "You deserve to be happy." "Thank you, Emily," I replied. "I wish you the same." Walking away from that cafe, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had finally closed that chapter of my life. I was free. Now, as I sit here writing my story, I feel a sense of peace. It has been a long and difficult journey, but I have come out stronger and wiser. I have learned to value myself, to embrace the possibilities that life offers. I ask for your advice. Have any of you been through something similar? How did you cope? How did you move on? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences. Maybe we can help each other heal. Thank you for listening.